what I started to notice over a period of years was that so many people, especially in this age group, were feeling the same thing, because I do think it's something about, in your 20s, you're in this sort of like, I just want to live and experience and travel and just, it's not as quite as maybe serious. And then I think there's a transition period which is what I wanted to explore more of in your.
Welcome, Lia Menaker, to No Competition. I am so glad you're here. If this is your first time watching No Competition, you are in for something super special. Let me introduce goddess, priestess, I Am Kyros, Lia Menaker. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. So let's just dig in here. How the hell did you come up with this album? Because it is medicine. It's medicine for the soul. It's awakening. It's calling. It's all of that. Everything that everybody's feeling tipsy about right now. We're all in the thick of it. So how did this birth out of you?
Well, first of all, that was the goal. So I'm so happy you say that. It's like the greatest compliment you could say.
It totally reaches. You totally brought me and kind of midwifed me into the next chapter of my life. So I'm just
great.
So
I'm gonna have to quote that.
Not only that, I get to talk to you about it. So
yeah, it birthed. It's hard to say like the initial birthing, because it came out of this frustration in my early 30s, now almost mid 30s, of something feels different in my life. The things I want feel different. Who I am feels different. And between the messages we're being fed culturally about what it means to be happy and successful, between what I've always told myself I am, what people reinforce who have been in my life of who I am, like something needs to be explored here, because it doesn't feel, I don't feel like happy, or I don't feel, not that I was depressed or anything, but it didn't feel like I had come to terms with the full experience of who I was. And what I started to notice over a period of years was that so many people, especially in this age group, were feeling the same thing, because I do think it's something about, in your 20s, you're in this sort of like, I just want to live and experience and travel and just, it's not as quite as maybe serious. And then I think there's a transition period which is what I wanted to explore more of in your 30s, where you're like, okay, what does it mean that I kind of enjoy just being around people I love versus always wanting to explore? What does it mean that like I want to make more room in my life for not just my dreams, but for, supporting the people I love and supporting, good causes. And so those things start to play this role in your life, and how to fit it all in and redefine it all was confusing. So I think the birthing came out of, specifically, I had this unique experience. And I could talk forever about this. So if you have a question, just cut me off or something. But I had the unique experience of kind of knowing what I wanted to do my whole life, which was I want to be in musical theater. So I did plays, and I knew what I wanted to go to college for. I went to Penn State, a conservatory style program, did musical theater training, wanted to be on Broadway. I had that all and never really explored. I didn't use college for what do I want to do, So I never had that experience. And then somewhere in my mid 20s, I thought, I don't know if this life is for me all the time. And I think we're sort of, at least we were fed this idea of, you have to focus on one thing that you're going to be. And it was like, well, what if I don't want to just be that one thing? Or what if it changes? Or, what do I do? And so I had that experience, and I thought, well, my whole life I've only known this. So I think I need to go back to school and I just wanted, not focus on me so much, maybe just help people. And so long story short, I ended up kind of going down this path that wasn't really right for me, because of this need to explore more of who I was and the path.
How did you know it wasn't, I'm sorry for cutting you off. How did you know it wasn't right for you? Because often I think
Mm-hmm.
This is a very kind of a misguided society where just certain suggestions can make you feel like you should want something or feel
Mm-hmm.
like something's the right thing, and it betrays your natural alert system in your system that says, no, this is not right. So
Yeah, yeah.
how did you come to that fork in the road, the crossroads?
Honestly, for me, it was, the first one was for the musical theater thing. That was sort of the first time I had that realization. And that was a little bit easier because I just sort of saw the lifestyle around this doesn't really fit. Like, I'm not a New York City person. I'm not really a city person. And the auditioning thing, like just the whole world around everything but being on stage didn't work for me. And so I was like, okay,
Yeah.
that's clearly not going to be my whole thing. And this idea that I had to fit someone else's vision, which was not working for me. So that was the easy part. But then when I decided, oh, I want to help people, and it's a whole other story of why I just thought public health would be a really good road for me. But it wasn't until I stopped kind of lying to myself that I realized it wasn't the right, like, I think many of us do this. We're like, well, this is what I should do. So I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to go for it. And I'm going to study. And I don't have time to really question if it's the right thing to study. And okay, I just know I'm going to be helping people. And then you just kind of keep going for it. But I think there's always a piece in the back of your mind that's like, I don't really feel like I belong here. It doesn't make sense ever. So I think it's like, you should just listen to that voice as much as possible and I have multiple thoughts about that. But when I finally got out into the real world and was working for the CDC and, in the thick of it, I just was like, I really can't picture myself doing this every day for the rest of my life.
Can I ask you a question about that? Just to put a little comma right there.
Yeah.
If you could compare the CDC, right,
Mm-hmm.
to a body of music, like a genre per se,
Mm-hmm.
of music, what was the CDC like for you at that time you were in it?
Oh my God. Okay.
A genre, like just, generalization, right? We're talking about generalizations.
And I wanted to also make clear this was my experience. Like, I have total respect for the CDC. I don't know. I want anyone I know from there to be like, what? Come on. But from my experience there, it was.
Oh, I just mean by sense of rhythm, like not necessarily like pejorative or negative, just like if there was a rhythm, you know how like salsa has a rhythm, metal has a rhythm. What do you think the rhythm of the CDC was like for you during that time?
Ooh, okay. Let me think about that. The rhythm it's probably a mix of genres.
Yeah, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
It's probably a mix of like there's a constant constant movement, but also kind of ambient at the same time. I feel like there's like something with like a strong drum beat. I don't know.
Like Enya. What I'm hearing is like Enya.
Something with like a strong drum beat, but yet like ambient at the same time.
Yeah. Kind of like just kind of ethereal, but like there's all like trance music, trance hop or what, I forget what that music's called, but like just kind of constant rhythm, but also kind of very ethereal.
Yeah. Yes. That's what I would call it. That's such an interesting question. I love that.
My question to you, the reason why I think that this is so important, right, is because when I listen to your music, I can hear, at least to my own ear, certain rhythms that remind me of certain social patterns, right? And exactly, right? Like if you ever think about the rhythm of the Caribbean, if you've ever spent time there, all of Caribbean music makes sense because it feels that way, right? And the things that we experience in our lives and how we are interpreting those rhythms, there is some type of unified experience of it. That's the reason why we can all, like, if you're a country fan, for instance, and you love country, there's probably a certain rhythm by which you live your life that feels like country, right? Or
this is blowing my mind right now. I've never thought of that. That is so cool. I feel like I listen to so much music again and think about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, are you a fan of Imogen Heap?
Yeah, I wouldn't I don't know all of the material, but I like what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah, there's this way in which I feel like Imogen Heap and your some of the styles of music, especially when you say that it's like trance, but there's kind of like this rhythm, this ambient kind of thing that
Yeah.
sounds like the CDC, like what you're describing. That first track that you have, like
Yeah.
describes your first track. I'm sorry, I'm blanking. What is it?
All
I
my
am
life.
All My Life.
Yeah.
Yes, just gorgeous, gorgeous tune. And it reminds me personally of like college and when I was being introduced to the Cranberries and some other just kind of like way more experimental female rock music than I had ever heard up until that point, you know. And
Yeah.
but the underlying, what I think what made the Cranberries so at least to me so evocative, is that rock felt feminine with them. It's something on
Ah.
you can't quite nail it, but up until that point rock was always led heavily by a male hand, and I feel like the Cranberries introduced
Uh-huh.
this feminine wiles on top of rock, you know, and
I
it
love
just
that.
totally hits, you know, and I
Yeah.
felt that in your music.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I mean, I wonder, yeah, if some of that stemmed from the rhythm I had experienced, well, not just from the CDC, but like from there, really that's when the album started to take off, to probably answer your original question, because I took the long route. But that I saw, well, if musical theater is not right for me, and you know, I'd still been writing music, but I never took it as like a career thing. And I said, and if this thing I just studied and got a degree in literally is not right for me, like what is? And I was having an identity crisis at age like 31 or something, and I was freaking out, you know, because everyone I feel like starts to go through that in college. But I was like, well, I already knew what I wanted to do, and now I'm so confused. And so it was like
Yeah.
all like, that's where really I would say the album probably birthed, because it was like, how many people must feel like this? Like they're just going day to day and they want purpose. They want to understand who are they beyond their jobs? We're constantly fed that, right? Like
Yeah.
what you do is who you are. And it's just bullshit. Excuse my
It is.
language, but yeah, it's
No,
just,
absolutely. I completely agree with you. Now, I just went off on a tangent telling you what genres you remind me of and like, you know, people who I love. Can you tell me a little bit about your muses, people who inspire you and inspire your music?
yeah, I love so many different kinds of music, but I would say if I had to pinpoint the biggest inspirations, it's interesting that you mentioned the Cranberries and the femininity they brought, because I think that has to do with a lot with my inspirations. Um, being starting with like old jazz singers like Billie Holiday and Nina Simone, who for their time were, you know, they were ahead of their time, and they brought, it was like both of them were so like they were just such beautiful women. Like they weren't afraid to see that the dark side of themselves and the world, and that's what made them beautiful. And so
Absolutely.
yeah, and I love that. You know, I think we don't always allow women to, like, you know, there's this idea of like smiling and being pleasant all the time, and I think that's finally changing a little now, which is great. But I love that there was, and like even not as much anymore, but a little of my inspiration is from like the Tori Amos, Fiona Apple world. And they are just like, they're not, none of these women are afraid, and Joni Mitchell are afraid to be real. And that's what I love. It's never the popular opinion. Like,
Yes.
um, I'm not
I
sure.
call them truth tellers because it supersedes genre, it supersedes
Hmm.
anything. You know, there's men or women or trans or whatever. It's
Yeah.
there is a truth telling factor. Bob Dylan has it, Joni Mitchell, Fiona Apple,
Uh-huh.
Alanis Morissette, all of the people who you were talking about, really, Nina Simone, Billie Holiday.
Hmm.
There's an owning of something and only
Mm.
wanting to put out what is true. And
Mm.
I totally feel like you gave us like no filler in your album I Am Kyros, which translates right to I am Lord, right?
It's so funny because I didn't know that originally, but I've seen that there, because there's multiple meanings of it. But for
Yeah.
me, I chose the name originally, and that's like a whole other story. But which eventually just became the album name. But I took it as time. It's a Greek concept of time and the opportune time to act, like when everything comes together and it's the exact moment. And it felt like the moment for the album and for this side of me. But there's been other interpretations that are so fun to hear that come to light. Yeah.
Well, when I think about like the etymology of words, right, and Lord and time being in the same stratosphere, this is something that has like been a huge pastime of mine, and anybody who knows me knows I'm a big nerd about this, and words and what they mean. Like, there's a reason why sometimes words don't work and why communication is so hard, because there are sometimes too many words that are too similarly related without enough understanding of the bridge between things. And that nuance is often what we're searching for. But we don't know the other word or how that word got to be that word to begin with. So it's like choosing, you go to your favorite ice cream store, and what you really, really want is like a pretty specific kind of peach ice cream is someplace that you really can't get all places, right? If you're going to an ice cream shop and you say, I want peach ice cream, and they say, well, we don't have peach, but we have strawberry. Strawberry and peach are like two different leaves. They're not even like the same kind of ice cream, but we often settle, and that goes to my second piece with Wow, Imprinted. Can you talk to us a little bit about that track and just the line that you opened up with that track was just phenomenal.
Thank you. There's a lot that went into that track, and that one was really, I'm so happy you mentioned that one, because it was the most fulfilling to create, because it was the last song I wrote for the album. And I had, over a period of time creating the album, gotten more comfortable with producing and trying new things. And during the creation of the album, I had been on Twitch live streaming, doing like, just allowing myself to fail if I failed, and just trying looping and fun stuff. And so by the time I got to Imprinted, I was like ready to write this song, and this stuff happened. And like, a lot of it wasn't planned. I just like sat in front of my keyboard and just said, just play around. And I just got in a state, and then things started just coming, and it started off with loops. And then I took the loops and made a structure. Actually, I think that loop started on Twitch with people like talking in the chat, and I was like, oh, what do you guys think about this and this? And then from there, I went back and structured it, and then added like just different things. And then I thought, I want to add something from like Ram Dass is heard in there, and some from the spiritual teachers that have really gotten me to this place, which the song really is sort of almost like a growth, I think, from the other tracks, because it was after sort of the exploration was almost over. And I was like, these are just my thoughts on everything, and what I've learned, and the spiritual teachings I'm learned and I'm working on, and a reflection of some of the stuff in our culture that I hope y'all are seeing. Like,
but you put that as the third track in your, is this, are you calling this an album or an EP?
An EP, yeah.
An EP. So you put this solidly in the middle, right? And I always think that that's where we place things is so important, which basically, I don't know if you know this, but you made an infinity. If that was the ending, by which you made this whole thing, and you placed it in the middle, it's because you knew you were always doubling back around to that idea. And I think it's perfect in the middle, right? Because I thought when I listened to it, shucks, this should be the end song. This should be the finale. Yeah. But the fact that you put it in the middle, I thought was so important. And also squeezed between, if I can say it, two like super sultry tracks, where the first one, Some Kind, felt like Lauryn Hill and D'Angelo's Nothing Really Matters. You had that like, electric piano coming in, and nice and warm. And it kind of hits you, like you kind of lull people into this kind of warmth. I can't explain it, emotional warmth, and then you give them what's real. Can you give for those of us who haven't heard your EP, can you just tell them what the first lines of Imprinted are?
Yeah. So, and I do want to say too first that that's so cool about the Infinity. The reason I put it in the middle was really just because it broke up. It was the best way to break up the kind of slower tracks.
Oh, okay.
I was like, people are going to get.
It was has nothing to do with some big spiritual thing.
Maybe underneath it all, it did. Like, that's cool, because I thought people would get bored if they just heard, and like they're, they need the space. But I love the Infinity thing. I'm like, oh, maybe I should say that's why I did it. That's so cool.
It felt that way to me because I've been listening to this, in preparation for this interview. Mm-hmm. I've been listening to it over and over again. And as an artist, I know that there's certain things that I do that are very intentional, mm-hmm. and things that I do sometimes that are like not necessarily consciously intentional, but mm-hmm. intentional nonetheless, Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was just a really interesting placement in between, the rest of the tracks.
Yeah, I love that you noticed that. So the first line, trigger, like a pistol, a propensity, automatic mechanisms, past decisions, mold the sense of identity, the sentiment, our leash. It's a lot of words.
Yes.
So
it's all really, really, really important. And in the beginning, you say something about, I feel my feelings, but I know I am not my feelings, right?
Oh, yeah. So that is technically the opening before I kind of really start singing. I feel what I am not what I feel. And that came to me after I wrote the whole song. And I was like, those words just came to me. I don't know. I was like, that is cool. And that totally describes the song.
Yes, and the whole song wrapped up in the first sentence,
Yeah.
And as a writer, I always love it when somebody gives you the whole idea of the book right there in the first page. Like, you can read on if you want to, but this is what the book's about.
That's so funny. It's like the Spark Notes in the beginning.
Yes, exactly. So you totally gave everybody Spark Notes. Totally.
Thank
and
you.
The clips was really, really well timed. I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
When you're looking, when you're putting your work out there as an artist, right? Mm-hmm. How in this new space of being either conqueror of time or Lord or whatever you want to call Kyros inside of you, what are you asking of your music listeners? Because there is a request in what you are stating. It feels like to me,
Mm-hmm.
What are you explicitly asking folks as you put this music out that is so tender and so vulnerable and so, to my estimate, truth?
What I'm asking, because my first instinct was to say I'm asking for for them people to allow a challenge to their perspective. However, I did come to terms when I released this, because it was so kind of close to me and meant like there's a lot of depth and meaning in it for me. It's not just like a fun album. Mm-hmm. That I thought, well, if someone hates it, because you get trolls too, you get that. I said, well, that's equally as cool. So maybe I'm not asking that, because that, whether they know it or not, whether they resist it, they clearly are resisting it. It's saying something then. Maybe later down the line, it'll do something for them, or it'll trigger something, or
can I just speak to that real quick? I'm really big about no bullshit and trying to be completely transparent about my own stuff, right? Anybody who knows me as a person knows that I'm always just I don't want to put out some false identity about myself. So when our mutual friend, Derek Wilson, AKA Arch Palatine, came to me about your stuff, I played it, and I thought I was in like this open place to like listen to new music. That's my new thing right now, right? Just like really being open to what messages the universe is bringing towards me through the people who I love and music, because I'm most receptive to music. And I couldn't listen to it, Lia. The first time, I listened to your first 2 tracks, and then I turned it off. And I did not know why. I did not know why. Mm-hmm. And then something happened that week that was very, very profound for me. I'm in the middle of some huge transitions in my life, right? Mm-hmm. And I came back to it. And I cried and meditated throughout the whole album because I was ready to hear it. So I will say this, and this is like totally the underpinnings of the show and no competition. Like, what you have in that truth telling in this album is some heavy hitting stuff, right? Like, you know,
Yeah.
in some way, you have to be tuned in and really willing to lean into that tuning in. Some
Yeah.
people may think that they're open, but really hearing what you have to say takes
Yeah.
a mindset. And you've been tuning
Yeah.
yourself up for a particular mindset. And I just want you to know that as somebody who loves music and is constantly pushing myself to hear
Mm.
all the things that I find just bizarre or out there or whatever, I'm always pushing the boundaries of my understanding
Mhm.
and my prejudice. I had a hard time
Yeah.
because I wasn't ready for your truth. And I think that's some powerful stuff right there. That's
Thank
some
you for
powerful
saying
stuff.
that. Yeah, because when I first released it, it was either people like there was mixed reactions, like either there was never just like a middle ground. It was like some people were really resistant, and I got so upset at first. And
Yeah.
a couple people said that exact same thing to me. Like they're just not ready to hear what you have to say. And I think I've come around and realized like I've relaxed because I think when you first release something, you're just like a little too close to it, you know?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
just with a little bit of time, I realized like, you know, and when I try to play this stuff on Twitch, I get the same reaction. Some people don't want, and it's okay. I realize it's okay that not everyone either wants to or is ready to hear that. And I don't need to get upset because it doesn't make it any less, or it's just to just be ready that not everyone is going to be like, yeah, I'm ready for a deep transformation. Like it's not everyone's
Yes.
thing. So
Yes, and
I'm
I
glad you
don't
said
even
that.
mean to like consumerize this, right? But like it's
Yeah.
also nobody was ready for Apple until they were, right? Like Apple changed the
Mhm.
world, you know, like PCs and Microsoft changed the world. Computers in general changed the world, right? So when you
Mhm.
have something that is of new thought, right?
Mhm.
Or of a certain kind of new consciousness, which I definitely think you're a
Mhm.
beautiful seamstress in the mass consciousness, all the things that are percolating for this time, the time that we're living
Mhm.
in right now. You just have the right kind of medicine. We're just evolving to a point where we can actually hear what you've been like diligently in your, you know, your studio workshop working on for us, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is the reason why I created this show, because this is some next level stuff, and I truly believe that there's no competition for it. We're literally
Mm.
listening. Your music is leading us into the next level of music consciousness, emotional intelligence. There's just so much there. So this
Mm.
is the fun part of my show. I hate that we're
Mhm.
moving because I just could talk to you all day.
This is great. I love this. Yeah.
um, the next part of my show is what I love for people to do is take this line, no competition is the only groove, right? And I want you to sit with it for a second, and I want you to emote out what those words sound like to you.
To speak it out the way it sounds to
Yes,
me.
and you have to say it 3 or 4 times. Some people don't like the triplet thing, so you could do it 3 or 4 times, but you got to hit us with it 3 or 4 times. It could be different every time, but it has to be
Okay.
truly you emoting out those words and what they
I love
mean to you.
that. Can you just repeat the words?
Sure. No competition is the
Mhm.
only groove.
Mm. No competition is the only groove.
Yes.
No competition is the only groove. No competition is the only groove.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Just
That was
came
some
out how
more.
it came out. I don't know.
Yeah, that's so real. That struck me on a like a solar plexus level. Totally.
I love
So,
that.
so how can people find you? How can they find your music? Like where do we find you? How do we what's your Twitch handle? Like how can people
Mhm.
find this brilliant stuff?
So I'm on all of the streaming things wherever you listen to music that way. Just Lia Menaker. I don't know if you're gonna write out my name so that people can see it, but LIAMENAKER. My Instagram, Facebook is all the same at Lia Menaker. Same with Twitch, twitch.tv/Lia Menaker, Twitter, all those. And if you want to just listen for free on Bandcamp, I'm on there too. I'm on all the things.
Nice, nice. Very, very great. Very great.
Oh,
All
can I
right.
just shout out one more thing too, that
Oh,
I started a
absolutely.
Patreon,
Oh, yeah.
patreon.com/Lia Menaker, where I'm trying to also kind of show the insight into like the songwriting process and just share general life reflections and drawings and whatever kind of comes out of my crazy brain. So I'm on there too, if you like Patreon.
Nice. Next big steps for the future. What can we look for from you in these next days to come, in these times of crazy uncertainty? What are we looking forward towards you? What are you building in our lives right now that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, well, so the Patreon's a big one because I really want to kind of create community in some form, and I'll be like throwing in like, because I also teach voice and piano lessons, so throwing in like some little tips for people that are interested in that,
Nice.
just any kind of music, life, love oriented things. So there's that, and then I'm
Well,
just.
no, so that's real important, y'all. Like,
Mhm.
I'm really, really pushing this girl because if you haven't heard the EP, she's incredible. She's got an amazing voice and
Thank
plays
you.
vocals. And at what time? This is the thing that people don't understand. Like, if you like Adele, Adele was Adele before she was Adele, right? And if you had the potential to get vocal lessons or piano lessons from Adele, right? Just before she tipped, right? That's some next level stuff. So
I
what I
still got
what
some
I'm
space.
saying, yes, exactly. So what I'm saying about Leah Menaker is, you just because you haven't heard of her does not mean that her talent will not supersede all expectations. So don't make that a small thing, because I have a Patreon page too. I give vocal lessons and guitar lessons. Like, it's an opportunity to be taught by some of the best in our field right now, whether or not
Mhm.
large society knows about us yet. This is an
Mhm.
incredible opportunity to be taught by some incredibly humble. I mean, you're as humble as the day is long, and you're
Thank
doing
you.
it all the time. So I just want to shine your Patreon, because that's some real stuff, and people don't always know the opportunity in that.
Yeah, I can't wait to look up you. I didn't know you had a Patreon.
Yes, Danny
Yeah.
Ocean. Same thing with me. Everything's at Danny Ocean, DANIE.
Awesome.
I'll
Awesome. Yeah.
definitely hit you up too for being a Patreon supporter. And I'm
Awesome.
just so I'm just so excited you could come on this show. Do you have any last thoughts? Anything to leave us with? Especially when folks listen to your album and they're feeling all the feels, right? That we're not our
Mhm.
feelings. This is the real part of it, right? What,
Mhm.
what do you leave them with? What do you leave us with, Leah?
Ah, I leave everyone, you know what? I'm just going to leave everyone with some positivity because this is a really difficult time for many people to just, and hopefully the album can do this for people too, to just kind of sit with everything and just keep moving. It's not all going to feel great, but we're going to get through this. Constantly, don't be afraid to reflect on who you are, and if you've changed, it's okay if you've changed. We're all changing all the time, and I'm always trying to reflect on that too. And lastly, just I think community, connect with some amazing, beautiful people. I feel grateful that we were connected, and stay connected with the people that make you feel good and that you can make you feel good too.